Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to Berkshire in England once again, and this is a brewery who I've had some very good experiences with in the past, but if I'm remembering correctly this is only my second review dedicated to them and my fourth one where they've been involved. So for this one we're going to head down to Finchampstead, which is of course home to Siren craft brew. This beer is called the Sheltered Spirit. It's a bourbon barrel aged Imperial porter with tamarind added to it, comes in at 14% ABV, and it should be pretty good. It was rated 99 overall on Rate Beer, and I think it was well into the 4 stars when I checked out on Untappd as well, so it should be a really good beer. This is the first dark one that I'm trying from these guys as well, and like I always say, it's always good to try a beer from the dark side of things and from the lighter side of things when it comes to brewery. Then you get a kind of idea of the scope of what these guys are capable of. But the last beer I did from these guys was $10 Shake, and that was a really awesome IPA. That's one of my favourite ones I think that I've reviewed on the channel in quite a wee while. But yeah, should be a really good beer this one, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this one. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, of course, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Siren before. No doubt there will be some more in the near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city or state, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. You guys are one of the best sources of information when it comes to craft beer, so don't hesitate to get in touch. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Siren Craft Brew then. So Siren Craft Brew was founded back in 2012 by Darren Anley in Finchampstead in Berkshire in England, and he'd previously been a home brewer, and he actually worked on most of his recipes prior to establishing the brewery. A lot of the core beers that they released early on were actually completed in 2010, but they were only bottled in around 2013. But since foundation, these guys have been growing really steadily and increasing their range of beers and their brewing capacity as well. And in 2014 they had to add a new bottling line, and this really got their beers out there a little bit more. But the brewery are constantly ranked very highly by the likes of Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate and all of these things. For a period of time as well, they were also rated the best brewery in England, and as I say, I've had some very good experiences with these guys. But the brewery itself is named after the Sirens in Greek mythology, who were women or winged creatures whose singing used to take sailors onto the rocks, and the brewery names a lot of their beers after different spirits and things like that accordingly. So it's a nice bit of imagery they've got for their marketing and stuff like that. But as I say, the main thing is that their beers are pretty bloody good. So if you get the chance to try some of the Siren beers, I highly recommend that you do. These guys are one of the really good English craft breweries that are going around at the moment. So yeah, as I say, $10 Shake is probably my favourite beer that I've had involving these guys so far. So make sure you check that one out if you do get the chance. But let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself. So like I said, this one's a 14% Imperial Porter. It's bourbon barrel aged, and they've added some tamarind to it as well. Tamarind's quite an interesting thing. It's this sort of this kind of pod-shaped fruit, and it's the pulp inside it that's edible, and it's used on a lot of different cuisines throughout the world. I think it's supposed to give you a kind of sweet and sour sort of quality to your food. On the side here it says Sheltered Spirit. We brewed this beer in 2016 with the sole intention of aging it in bourbon barrels. The inspiration was all about tamarind, an ingredient revered for the sweet and sour depth it can add to dishes and drinks, and particularly popular in the tropics. It didn't disappoint, offering amazing fruity aroma almost immediately. In folklore, tamarind trees are said to harbour ghosts, and for that reason often found on the outskirts of villages. Our Sheltered Spirit has serenely matured into something very special. So yeah, hopefully this is a good beer. As you can see, the standard kind of Siren artwork on this one, there you can see on the top of it there, that's the kind of standard Siren symbol as well. That's also on the bottle cap. There's not really much more to say about it then, so we'll get it out and into the glass. Definitely looking forward to this one. Nice little smoky opening there, and we'll get it out and into the glass. See how we get on. This should be a really nice beer. Yeah, so as you can see, it's poured a nice dark ebony rosewood colour. Half finger of a frothy, kind of very slight tan head on this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and a few little ones just going up towards the bottom of that head there. So as you can see, if I put my fingers behind this glass, the dark colour means that it's not really transparent at all, and probably it actually would be a bit transparent, I think, were it a little bit lighter. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about the colour of it. So let's take a closer look at the aroma and see how we get on. That's really unusual. That unusual aroma's got to be the tamarind. This is something I've never come across actually. I've probably had it in food and just not realised what it is. Like I say, it's a pod kind of fruit. It's a pod and it's the pulp inside it that is edible, that you get from these trees. But it's nice, this one. There's a little bit of a roasty black malt in the backbone there, some sweet chocolate, definitely a brown sugary presence as well, and you can pick up some of the nice woody spicy notes and a little bit of the kind of bourbon whiskey. But there's definitely there is a sort of unusual kind of almost like soy sauce kind of thing coming out of this beer as well. Bit of earthy hop and some red fruit, but the red fruit does have a little bit of an almost kind of boozy cake type thing to it. It's almost like a little bit of a rum cake or something like that that comes out of this beer. It's really interesting. There's a sort of soy sauce, rum cake kind of feel about this beer. And I don't think I've ever actually had that in any of the beers that I've reviewed. This one definitely has a unique aroma. So as I always say, take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But with this one in particular, you can smell right away. I think I'm getting drunk off the fumes on this, 14%. It is a pretty heavy one and you can tell that with this beer. It does smell nice and boozy. Definitely a bit of a cakey quality to this one, but the woody kind of bourbony notes are really nice as well. So yeah, just take a little bit of time and enjoy that aroma. But without further ado then, let's get stuck into this beer. So this is the Sheltered Spirit Bourbon Barrel Aged Imperial Porter at 14% with some tamarind added in from Siren Craft Brew in Finchampstead in Berkshire, in England. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål. Ooh. I tell you something, that is not what I expected at all actually. That's a lovely beer. I'll say that straight away. That is a really, really nice beer. And I'm not sure how old this is exactly. It must have been on the shelves. I bought this from what were they called again? Was it Beer Gonzo? Or Honest Brew, sorry. I bought it from Honest Brew. And it must have been there for quite a while. I just saw it, thought it sounded really interesting and picked it up. But it says on the back here, it's best before the 29th of the 10th, 2020. So you would be able to age it for about 2 years. They're saying they brewed it in 2016. I'm guessing it would have been released sometime last year. So it might well be somewhere in the region of a year old, something like that. But it's lovely. It really is a nice beer. But yeah, that's a really, really top quality beer. I'm glad that I got to try this one. It's so nice. It actually leans a lot more towards the kind of sweet side of things, but there's a nice bit of boozy warmth just hitting you in the chest with this beer. So be aware of that. This one is definitely a sipper. So good. Yeah. So in terms of the flavour of this one then, as I always say, sugar the beer around your palate and let your whole mouth adjust to it then. So with this one, you can feel there is a little bit of that roasty black malt kind of underpinning the beer. On top of that, you've got a lot of nice sort of dark high cocoa chocolate, but it's very smooth, and there are some lighter kind of milky flavours to it as well. In the middle of your palate though, you can feel those nice sort of toasted brown sugars. I'd say it leans a little bit more towards a kind of treacly molasses kind of thing. But yeah, it's really nice. As I was saying, like, you can pick up the sort of whiskey, or sorry, I shouldn't say whiskey, because bourbon and whiskey are not the same thing. And being a Scot, I should be very particular about that. But you can definitely feel those nice bourbony notes coming out of this beer. When you progress further into the aftertaste, you pick up a little bit of that oaky vanilla kind of thing. And then the sort of whiskey bourbon barrel things are sitting in there as well, which is really nice. But I like that one. I like how it's coming across. Everything in this beer just goes together really well, and the tamarind, definitely, it's interesting. I'm not quite sure exactly what kind of descriptor to put on it, because it's not like anything that I've kind of tried. It's almost a little bit, it's somewhere between like a rum cake and sort of soy sauce kind of quality that it has. So it's really kind of interesting that, but it works. I mean, it really does work. I would have never, as I say, I wasn't even sure what tamarind is. I've probably had it with all the Asian food and stuff that I've eaten over the years. But it does add a really interesting dimension to the beer, and it works particularly well with those kind of bourbon flavours. It kind of sits there in the middle of the palate, and as the beer kind of mellows out a little bit, as your mouth adjusts to it and things, you can pick out that flavour. It is like a dark sort of rum cake, rum truffle, almost soy sauce kind of thing. It's some kind of combination of all three of those. You can feel it just sort of behind the front curve of your palate. It's almost like if you can roll your tongue a little bit, it's just almost at the furthest point forward where you can roll your tongue, and it is really quite nice, this. I mean, it's just a really unusual beer, but certainly it works. So maybe I need to remember that when it comes to home brewing and things. Get some tamarind and try it in a nice dark Imperial porter like this. It's really a lovely, lovely beer, this one. There's no two doubts in my mind about that. I like the way the sort of vanilla, woody flavours come out at the end as well, and it does have a little bit of a kind of roasted warmth to it. In terms of the mouthfeel, it's definitely a bit lighter, but I mean, I do wonder if this would have worked as it would have been interesting to see a sort of Imperial Stout version of this as well, because obviously the main difference between the porters and the Imperial Stouts is usually the malt content, of course, and generally it's the mouthfeel because you use different types of yeasts in them. But in that sense, this beer, I think it would be really nice in a big Imperial Stout. 14%, I always wonder if it's a little bit much for an Imperial Porter just because of that thinner mouthfeel, but it certainly works with this. You do get a little bit of the burn, but in terms of the flavour, you can't fault this beer at all. It's really nice. But yeah, it's really, really good. In the back corners of the palate, there's a little bit of a kind of smooth earthiness to it, which is nice, and you can feel that sort of spreading along the front kind of sides of your palate. As you go round the front curve of the tongue, there's maybe just a little bit of a lighter kind of grassy note. There is a wee bit of a red fruity presence to this beer as well, and that kind of, it's interesting how the tamarind kind of goes together with that sort of, they were saying on this back that it's a sort of sweet and sour character, and for me, yeah, when you get it really comes out more in the aftertaste, it does start to become a little bit sweet and sour, but it's almost got a little bit of a kind of rum cakey kind of thing to it, and it mixes really well with those sort of bourbon barrel sort of flavours, the vanilla, that kind of rum cakey, bourbony whiskey type thing that it's got. There's so much going on in this beer. It's definitely one of the more complex ones that I've come across in recent times, but the hops are nice as well. If you just go behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you'll get that little oily bubble where some of those nice kind of fruity esters will start to come out of the beer. But yeah, I like how everything kind of goes together in this one. It's got a nice sort of juicy fruit note. There's a good bit of a sort of, I think it's a kind of plummy ester that's coming out of this one, but there's a good bit of a figgy note as well. It's quite a juicy red fruit that comes out of this one, but again, that suits it. As I say, those kind of cakey flavours and stuff that the beer has are really, really interesting, and that slightly kind of more prominent fruity note suits the beer as well. But overall, in terms of flavour, it really is bloody good, and it's got some interesting things going on with it. So have a go at it for yourself and see what you think. In terms of the mouthfeel of this one then, I'd say it's mid-bodied, maybe push, I'm not sure, is it pushing full-bodied? Yeah, it's sort of at the top end, the mid-bodied, the bottom end, the full-bodied. In terms of an Imperial Porter, it is quite heavy in the body in terms of the style. It's a big oily mouthfeel, this one. And I would say carbonation is really smooth on this. Definitely it leans towards the oily side of things. There's a good balance between the roasty black bitter malts and the nice sort of sweeter caramelly things. There's a good balance in that, but it does lean more towards the kind of sweet side of things. The flavour does kind of change a little bit as you kind of go through it. It's almost got a little tiny bit of spice to it, which is quite interesting. The hops are very, very smooth, and there's a nice little bit of a juicy fruity character that has a little bit of sharpness in it as well. So it's just a really, really interesting beer. They've done a great job with this one. Shelter Spirit, Imperial Porter with tamarind. Who would have thought to make a beer like that? You know, Siren are one of the breweries who will come up with really random things like that. And, you know, they pulled it off, but they've not only pulled it off, they pulled it off in quite spectacular fashion. So well done to them for this one. I can feel the booze starting to go to me a little bit with this beer, but it's really, really nice, and I'm very glad that I got to try this one. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Do check out my social media. I'd recommend this beer to those of you who love a big kind of complex imperial stout. If you like particularly these ones that have got the nice kind of cakey rum, sort of bourbon barrel aged sort of flavours, this is one that you are definitely going to enjoy. I'd be really interested to see if they did an imperial stout version of this, because I just wonder how it would come out with a slightly sort of thicker malt base and thicker kind of mouthfeel to it. But it's a really good beer, and I'm glad that I got to try it. So I hope you guys have enjoyed my take on it, and once again, thank you for watching. The Sheltered Spirit, an Imperial Porter at 14% with tamarind added to it, bourbon barrel aged, from Siren Brewery in Finchampstead down in Berkshire in England. A really lovely, lovely beer. So until the next time, Slanger just now, and I will catch you guys very soon. Make sure you check this one out if you can get a hold of it. It's pretty damn good. Skål.